Hello and welcome to Two Man Booth, the weekly podcast that can probably no longer hold its claim to be the shortest wrestling podcast that's weekly and episodic, available on the internet. With me, Jonathan.
And me, Adam. And this week we're going to start with the news, and I think the big news of the week was definitely the requests from talent for their releases from WWE. We know that The Revival definitely requested their release, and we believe, according to Meltzer, that has been denied. We've also heard rumours that Mike and Maria Kanellis, as they are known on TV, Mike Bennett from when he was on the independent scene, have also requested their releases, but we have not had that confirmed either way. Any thoughts on this news, Jonathan?
I think it's a shame for Revival. I don't think we need to go into this too much unless there is any follow-up from this. I think Revival will be massive, particularly for AEW if they manage to get them. I just think it's a shame for Revival. They've not been treated very well since they came up from NXT at the main roster. So just purely from a talent point of view, it's just a shame for them, really. Mike and Maria would be, in a way, some kind of get for another company, but I think Revival's the big story and the real shame, because we've said several times, apart from the Young Bucks, they're probably the best wrestling tag team on the planet.
Totally agree. And I think the Revival have suffered from a combination of unfortunate injuries and, as you said, bad booking. And you know what, if they were to go to AEW, particularly if they come in with somebody like Jim Cornette, and we get the Bucks versus the Revival, I think that would be a really, really cool storyline. But I don't think we need to say much more on that.
Yeah, there's been rumours that Ziggler may be angling for his release, but we've heard that so many times that until it's actually confirmed, we won't report it on this podcast.
Yeah. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have some signings from this week. So Trevor Lee officially announced that he is a new WWE talent. We're not sure whether it will be do NXT or 205 Live quite yet. I very much doubt it's straight to the main roster, but he's definitely signed with the company and will be debuting sometime soon. We've also had Ilya Dragunov signed to WWE NXT UK, which is kind of interesting. He didn't want to move to the States, much like Walter, and has kind of got a deal there where he can still live in Germany and come over and work the UK shows. And I think that's a big get for him, especially when you consider doing Ilya versus Walter matches, because they are always amazing.
Yeah, these are two really good signings. We've discussed just before we came actually on the air that we think that Trevor Lee could potentially be a 205 Live guy, but wherever he goes, he's a good wrestler. We've seen him do both babyface and heel characters really well, so he's a great signing. And particularly for NXT UK, Ilya Dragunov is a fantastic signing. And should Pete Dunne make I think what a lot of people expect now to be his progression up towards Raw and SmackDown?
It's got to be.
Yeah, I think that Ilya Dragunov against Walter would be the big feud moving forward. And they've had great matches before, and Ilya Dragunov is just a fantastic wrestler with a fantastic character.
Agreed. And on the subject of signings, Ring of Honor making some more moves this week, picking up CMLL superstar Rush.
Yeah, this is a really, really big move for ROH. They've continually made these big steps since the Elite left. They now have all this free money. They've got to use it, and they're picking up excellent talent. I've known Rush several years ago when he was in New Japan a little bit. He always impressed whenever he was there. I can't say I've seen him very much since, but from what I saw of Rush probably around 4 years ago now, he was always well respected, well liked by a lot of people that I was talking to at the time that followed Japanese wrestling, and we were all very impressed by him. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing how he's developed since then, because I haven't seen very much of CMLL.
Yeah, Rush has been a top star for CMLL for a while now. He's been huge on the Arena Mexico scene. He did the feud with Elliot Park over the summer, which we all thought was going to lead to the big show, but ended up not happening for whatever reason. And I think this is a big get for ROH. He's not a moves guy. He's very much a character and charisma kind of guy. So it'll be interesting to see whether that translates, because ROH's audience has changed so much over the years, and I think moves has become a big part of what they expect from their wrestlers' repertoire, and he's not going to give them that. But I think it's a huge get for him, and if he gets over, he will be an absolute superstar.
He's Los Ingobernables, isn't he, as well?
Yes, yeah.
So any involvement of Los Ingobernables and just that sort of story in America would be awesome.
We've got to move on to some sadder news for ROH, which is the stuff. They had 2 shows at the weekend. One was a TV taping at Centre Stage, and one was a show we'll come on to later on Reign Supreme. But at the Centre Stage show, Chris Sabin suffered his 3rd ACL tear. Really, really tough for Sabin. You've got to think that this has got to push him closer to retirement, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a real shame. Sabin was in line for a title shot as well, as far as I believe.
Yes, he was one of the guys who was promised an ROH World Championship shot, yes.
Yeah, so that's really sad that he was going to get that shot at some point in the near future, and that ACL injury has just ruined that. I think we both agree that we've always liked Sabin. I loved him in the Machine Guns back in TNA when it was called TNA. And it's just a real shame. It's really sad.
And a slightly less serious injury, but still an injury nonetheless, which is not nice to hear about, happened the next night to Flip Gordon. He was wrestling Tracy Williams in what I was actually quite looking forward to, in a match that was cut really short, and the referee stopped it because Flip suffered a legit injury. This, I think they think, is a sprain rather than a tear, so it's likely to only keep him out for about a month, but still not a great time for Flip. And he was another guy who was in line for an ROH World Championship shot after winning the Sea of Honor tournament on Jericho's cruise. So 2 big losses for ROH, really.
Yeah, as long as it's not a long-term thing, hopefully this should be okay. I believe Flip's in for quite a big year this year with the Elite leaving, but also Flip's affiliation with the Elite. I'm hoping that he can have quite a big year and gain quite a push. Further up the card, he had a fantastic match with Bully Ray at Final Battle. So I'm hoping that and his relationship with the Elite can push him now further up the card. So as long as he comes back, he takes the time off to heal this injury, as long as it's just a sprain, then hopefully he'll get back on track very quickly and be an asset to Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and speaking of the Elite, we had Kenny Omega at the banquet for the Tokyo Sports Awards in Japan, and he made quite an interesting comment where he mentioned that he was there picking up the Match of the Year award for his match with Okada at Dominion.
Shock horror.
Yes, shock horror. And he mentioned that he probably wouldn't be there next year to pick up the same award.
Wonder where he's going.
I think he's got some friends I may want to see.
A particularly elite group of friends.
Yeah, I'd say elite.
The Elite.
And speaking of the Elite, All Elite Wrestling has not officially announced, but it seems all but confirmed that they have signed rising indie star Jungle Boy to the promotion. It should be announced sometime this coming week. Kind of interesting how this landscape is affecting PWG now, because Jungle Boy's literally just been booked on his first PWG show, which is taking place tomorrow night. He hasn't even appeared on it yet. Usually a guy gets a year running PWG and somebody goes, my God, this guy's awesome, let's sign him. And he's been picked up before he's even got there.
I think this is something that Dave Meltzer reported on The Observer a couple of weeks ago, and we mentioned it on our first episode, that there's really never been a better time to be a professional wrestler since the death of WCW, because there were so many places to go. The problem with that is that for smaller independent companies like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, they'll have people for maybe 1 or 2 shows who'll show some promise, and because they're promising, they'll get signed really quickly. So for companies like PWG, who a lot of people love PWG, it's going to be difficult for them. At the same time, great for Jungle Boy. I'll be honest, I have never seen him wrestle, so next time we talk about him, I'll have to make sure that I see him, especially if he's going to be in AEW. I'm going to have to make sure that I see him. But the more they're picking up talent and the more they're picking up stars, the more steam that company will get. And hopefully with the TV deal, it would appear to be just around the corner in terms of an announcement. AEW can only go from strength to strength at this point.
And PWG will always survive. They've had talent exoduses since the dot. They'll be fine.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
So that's it for the news, and I think we'll move on to the WWE shows of the week. And we obviously start, as we always do, with the flagship show, Monday Night Raw. Interesting show this week. They're still trying a lot of weird stuff. And we opened with a segment that I did not enjoy, and I know for a fact you did not enjoy.
Oh, I hated it. Hated it.
Do you want to take us through this one? I know I usually lead, but do you want to take us through this one?
No, that's fine. So, You are correct in that at the moment they're throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, definitely.
And this was the perfect example of this. So Braun came out, and Braun started to deliver a fairly fine promo. I didn't think the writing of it was very good, but Braun delivered it well, because we did say when Braun is scripted, Braun can deliver a good promo. But then he started leading the crowd in a na 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 goodbye chant, which is very strange, and started leading the crowd in chants, which is not really what Braun should be doing. He then ended up chasing Corbin to the back. After Corbin came out and insulted him and was mean and nasty to the monster amongst men. Corbin was then hiding in a limo, and that was revealed in song by Elias.
Now, I kind of like that bit.
Oh, I like that.
That's
yeah.
the one bit of the segment that I did enjoy, was Elias singing that song. I thought it was great use. If you're going to do an angle like that, I thought it was a great use of Elias and a great way of getting Braun to Corbin.
Oh yeah, I didn't mind the Elias bit. It was funny. And I think that was what a lot of this segment was intended to be.
Yeah, but that was probably the only bit that actually came across as funny.
Yeah. So Elias then in song tells him that that Corbin is hiding in the limo. We've, at the start of the show, seen Vince McMahon arrive in a limo, so we know that maybe it might have been Vince's. So Braun then goes up to the limo, tries to get him out of it, fails. So as a result, decides, you know what, I'm a monster. I shall just grab a big lead pipe and I will smash my way through the window.
Not do a Goldberg.
No, he didn't use his arm. That was a
Smart move by the Monster Among Men.
relatively smart. Let's go.
Smarter than Goldberg.
Yes, that does not say very much. But smashed his way through the window, literally pulled the door off. Corbin then, I think, pooed his pants and ran away. And anytime that Corbin goes off screen, I am happy. But the problem then was what then happened next. So obviously we then realise that this is Vince's limo that Vince arrived in just at the start of the show. And Vince then looks very angry. The problem with that is then, as Braun realises, Braun backs away. The monster amongst men, Braun Strowman, backs away from what is now a however many years old man.
Yeah, it's in his 70s somewhere.
An old man. And it made Braun look silly, and it made him look weak because he was scared of an old man. Braun then insulted Vince and said that, you know, that limo wasn't worth anything because Vince tried to fine him $100,000. So as a result, Vince then took the title match against Brock Lesnar away from Braun Strowman. So Braun then sort of looked very angry and flipped over the limo, and that was it, really. It made Braun look very stupid and very, very, very weak.
What annoyed me most about this, I think, was, depending on who you believe and depending on what reports you've read, they had somewhere between a week and 3 months to come up with a reason to take Braun out of the storyline. Because some people believe this has always been the plan since Crown Jewel, because Vince did not want Braun losing again. So they've had somewhere within that time frame to come up with this idea, and this was what they came up with. This was their genius idea to protect Braun so he didn't have to lose to Brock again by making him look like a complete wimp in front of Vince. This was their grand idea? Really?
The main point that and I said this to you when I actually saw the show, the main thing is I put Austin in Braun's position.
Yeah.
Would Austin have ever backed away from Vince? Ever?
No.
If Vince was really annoyed at him, the first thing that Austin would have done is just stick his middle fingers up at Vince and walk off.
Or laughed. One of the two.
Or beaten the life out of him.
Or poured concrete into his car.
Or blow up a bus.
Yeah. Austin was a troubled man.
I just like damaging things.
So anyway, we then moved on to the next segment, which was Ronda and Sasha teaming to beat Nia and Tamina. This match was kind of just there. Sasha did all the work, which I guess was their way of putting over Sasha before her match with Ronda at the Rumble. What was interesting, I think, was what happened after the match, really. Sasha won by submitting Tamina, and then after the match, she and Ronda were interviewed. Sasha came out off as a bit of a lunatic here. So if this is the start of a heel turn, I like this. If it's not, this absolutely sucked, because this was not a babyface thing to do. Ronda's out there saying she's going to try and win against somebody she really respects at the Rumble, and Sasha took offence to that.
She did say Ronda did say a few things that were a little bit, if you were in, this is soundstage, if you were in a certain mood, you'd take badly. But Sasha certainly came off as the heel in this promo.
Oh, without doubt. I mean, the one line I can think of that you might be referring to there was when Ronda says, "I will try to tap you out at the Rumble." But
like she's decided how she's going to win.
What did Sasha expect? Did she expect her not to try and tap her out? Come on, like, Sasha came off as such a heel here, and like I say, if this is in the works for a heel turn for Sasha, that's fine. But I'm not going to put the cart before the horse, because we've seen Sasha turn heel, quote unquote, about 75 times over the past year.
The main thing about this segment was that when Sasha came out, she came out to crickets. The crowd did not react to her at all, which is awful. But the promo at the very least showed some fire from Sasha. If it's a heel turn, great. More than happy to see that. But it did show a little bit of fire from Sasha, and that's what she's badly needed. She's badly needed a bit of an edge to her character.
She did feel more like the boss in this segment.
Yeah, because I remember Sasha from NXT. She wouldn't take anything from anybody. The one little thing that I will mention is at the end of the segment, as she was walking up the ramp, Sasha held up the 4 fingers for the 4 horsewomen sign towards Ronda. And that's an angle and a feud that I think a lot of people have been expecting. 4 horsewomen against 4 horsewomen.
Wow, I missed that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was very subtle. But I can't remember what what Sasha actually said to Ronda.
Was it when Ronda was chasing Sasha up the stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sasha said something, I couldn't lip read, but said something and then held up the 4 fingers. Properly as well. She properly did it.
Unlike Charlotte.
Unlike Charlotte, yes.
So I'll just make an aside here. The next segment was just a bunch of jobbers outside of Vince McMahon's office waiting with the interviewer. King came out and noticed the cameraman. Like, I thought these people were meant to be invisible. What was that about? It was so weird. And why was King there? Anyway, not the point. So we then had the Riot Squad approach and arguing Bayley, Natalya, Ronda and Sasha backstage. This segment was no good really for me. It was just the typical, they're women, so they argue, and they argue like catty people. And Bayley backed up Sasha, Natty backed up Ronda. But then Natty and Bayley were more than happy to team up with each other to take on the Riot Squad with a mystery partner later on. I wonder who that could be.
It just seemed like a very lazy way to get into that tag match. It was very lazy. And you're right, that was one of the first things I thought when I saw that segment. Oh, look, women are arguing, because that's what they think women do. They just argue and they all hate each other.
Next up, we had the Revival versus the Lucha House Party. The Revival, the heels, continue to be the babyfaces of this story, as they got revenge against the heels, who are actually the babyfaces, by beating them at their own game and cheating to win. Not sure how this is meant to get the Revival over as heels.
Yeah, Revival cheated to win, but they cheated to win because that's how they have been screwed out of matches in the last several weeks. And on the bright side of this, though, and it does link to what we've been talking about at the start with the release requests, Revival are starting to get reactions. They are starting to get reactions again from the live crowd. I would have probably preferred them to get a clean win, because I just think Revival need that rebuilding. But at the same time, I was okay with them winning. The main thing is that they are starting to get reactions again. And another little side note is that they also had still #FTR, meaning F the Revival, an elite phrase on their trunks again.
Be interesting to see, now that the request has been turned down for the release, how they book the Revival going forward, because historically, when somebody makes a stink like this, especially a lower card guy, you know, they're going to be underground pretty much, 6 feet under. Will they try and make them happy so that when their contracts come up, and I don't know when the contract date is, so I don't want to speculate too much on that, but are they going to try and make them happier by booking them better to try and make them less likely to leave when that contract comes up?
I'll be honest, I don't think they can afford to. I don't think they can afford to do what they used to do and just go, well, if you want to leave, fine, but we're going to make you look dreadful for the next year and a half. I don't think they can do that, because I think people will love the Revival wherever they go, no matter what. So I don't think they can afford it. I think they need to try and keep as much talent as they can.
Next, we had Vince come out, and he was cutting a promo about what was going to happen now that he'd stripped Braun of the Royal Rumble shot. Cena came out, and I thought cut a very good promo talking about how Vince had been able to trust him for years, and every time Vince had trusted him, Cena had come through for him. And he kind of had what I thought was a little cute reminder at the end about the fact that he still had some ruthless aggression.
It's been 17 years, though.
It was a tie-up of the story, come on.
I do understand, but I think they've been trying to hammer that through for 7. They had a go again a couple of years ago to try and get ruthless aggression back over as the catchphrase. It didn't really work back then. We just know it as the ruthless aggression era because that's what they sort of trademarked it as. Same as Attitude, but Attitude has a much better taste in people's mouths.
So then Drew comes out and he wants Brock as well. Baron comes out and he wants Brock as well. I kind of liked how they didn't have them interrupt with the theme music. It made it seem a little bit more natural rather than just, we've scripted this guy's music to come on right now, so he's going to come out and he's going to cut a promo about why he wants a match against Brock Lesnar.
You mean when you've got a problem with someone, you don't get someone to put a tape on of music before you come out and disagree with them?
It's not something I do on a regular basis, no.
Oh, that's strange. I do it all the time.
So Finn then comes out to a pretty big reaction from the crowd. The crowd loved Finn Balor tonight, or rather on Monday night. But I think it's interesting that they've booked him so badly for so long, and he's still so over. It just goes to show if you are to a certain level of talent and the crowd has a certain affinity for you, no matter how badly they book you, as soon as you start becoming relevant again, they will love you like you have been a main eventer since day one. So Finn came out and said he was tired of being left out of these situations. He said he wanted to prove Vince wrong because Vince had never believed in him. And to do that, he punched Baron Corbin in the face, which is a good way to win my heart. That's all I'll say. And Finn then, the brawl broke out, and Vince kind of at the end of it, once Drew had laid everybody out with claymores, kind of said, well, let's have a fatal four-way later on tonight.
I think this was a pretty simple and pretty well-booked way to get into the match. The promos were fine. I had no problem with it. There was nothing that was sort of stand out. The only thing that was stand out for me was that when Finn Balor came out, Finn actually got a proper reaction. And the crowd liked it. When you're right, this was absolutely Finn Balor's night. And the crowd reacted to him as such. And I thought Finn's reaction of like, you know what, Vince, if you don't believe in me, whatever, but I'm going to show you. I don't particularly like the fact that Vince didn't believe in him just a little bit. I get the storyline of it.
It's overcoming that though.
But it's this whole idea of the company of the heels.
I'll never say that WWE booked the Daniel Bryan storyline well, because they didn't. So I will never ever say that. They looked into Bryan getting as over as he did. He was never intended to be the main event of that WrestleMania. None of that was meant to happen in their eyes. So they did look into it to an extent. But there was stuff about in the build-up to Mania where Stephanie's talking about how Daniel's a good B-plus player. You know, that's a good little role. That might have been Hunter, not Steph, actually. But regardless, that was the story they were telling because they did not believe in Daniel Bryan. And Daniel Bryan went to WrestleMania and he beat Triple H, Randy Orton and Batista in one night to win the world title. He proved them wrong, and it made he was already a megastar, but that helped catapult him to stardom, which we never saw fulfilled because of injuries. I think that's the story they're trying to tell with Finn Balor.
Possibly, but let's remember, like that booking did not make Bryan a star. Bryan became star, and they had to go with it.
Yes, but the booking they did in the Road to Mania with the B-plus player stuff and all that was all good, and I think this was more of the same. I didn't have a problem with this.
Oh, I totally agree on that.
So we then see Jinder backstage, and he wants Finn's shot because apparently we were robbed of a dream match at Survivor Series last year. I must have missed that memo.
One with Jinder, a dream match.
Jinder versus Brock, unless he meant dream as in he was going to put us to sleep.
Or like Nightmare.
Possibly. Anyway, Vince says he can pick any guy he wants to face, and if he can beat them, he will be in the Fatal 4-Way. Of course, he picks Finn, because Finn has more obstacles to overcome. More on that later. Nikki, Natty, and Bayley versus the Riot Squad. This was a match. It took place. Nikki's debut was very cool. She was definitely the person who was highlighting this match, and I thought they built it well. there wasn't a great deal to write home about in this match. It was just a good debut for Nikki. Bailey picked up the win with the elbow, but I thought Bailey actually looked quite good in the match as well. It was a fine match, a good debut for Nikki Cross.
Yeah, it was solid. It was nothing stand out. But Nikki's debut and her use on this show and in this match was the best of the debuts that we've had so far.
By some margin.
Because when I say debuts, I mean people standing in the background of certain shots. EC3 being in the segment that we talked about earlier where jobbers were being interviewed. EC3 is not a jobber. Why he was in that segment, we have no idea. This was by far the best use of a jobber. Best use of a debut, so far. Nikki was the star of the match. She performed her role very well, as she has since she came into NXT. No complaints and no problems. It was a decent match.
And speaking of the weird debuts that they've been doing, we then see Finn walking towards the ring for his match with Jinder Mahal, and he walks past Lacey Evans, who's dressed up like a pin-up model as she is. I've never really got her character on NXT, but there she was in the background talking to Mickie James and Dana Brooke, who I'm pretty sure Dana Brooke's going for the Kane record of most face heel turns.
I'm really glad that she was in the background. I think that added a lot to the show.
No, massively. Certainly made me want to tune in next week to see whether Lacey Evans is in more backstage segments where she's in the background.
Hey, maybe she might move to like catering.
That would be an upgrade.
Oh, that'd be thrilling. Imagine that.
So Finn defeated Jinder in the next match. It was a Jinder match with a lot of rest holds.
Oh, a lot of grab and a chin lock.
Yeah, he loves that old chin lock, does Jinder.
That's because that's like the move that he knows.
He also probably took the John Woo shotgun dropkick worse than I've ever seen anybody take that.
Yeah, I've never seen that move taken worse. When I saw it, I wasn't sure whether to laugh or to cry, because that move can look so cool done with the right person, and it looked absolutely horrendous.
Hey, you know what? It doesn't even have to be the right person. Do you remember Finn Balor's debut in NXT when he was teaming with Itami against the Ascension? I can't remember whether it was Victor or Connor, but one of them took that shotgun dropkick beautifully.
Because all you've got to do is fall backwards quite far.
Yeah, just throw yourself backwards. That's all you got to do. But Jinder couldn't do that. Former WWE champion, ladies and gentlemen. So we then moved on from that to the Intercontinental Championship match with Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, and current champion going into the match, Dean Ambrose. The match started off a bit clunky and weird, but as it went on, it got a lot better. I didn't like how much interference there was. I thought Leo's first interference was very cool, actually, but then it kept happening, and it was too much for me personally. Some people may have liked it, but it ended up being a very good match, and Lashley winning was interesting. It was one I didn't see coming, but as soon as I saw it, I wondered whether it was because they want to continue the Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose storyline, but they have an idea for Rollins to be Brock's challenger at Mania, and if that's the case, Dean Ambrose cannot have that championship, the Intercontinental Championship, going in the road to WrestleMania, because Seth Rollins will have to beat him.
Dave Meltzer has also reported on The Observer that he believes that Rollins versus Brock is the planned main event at the moment for WrestleMania. I like this match. I very much agree with you in that I felt that the 2-on-1 heel against babyface segment of the match went on far too long.
By the way, just as an aside, and I can't believe we didn't mention that, and sorry for interrupting you, but why did Seth and Dean work together in this match? That infuriated me.
The only thing that I liked about it is that it shows that there is still something between them. A couple of last week, I believe it was, and I think it was on Raw. Ambrose was doing a backstage promo, and he said something along the lines of, "Seth, you don't realise how much it hurts me to hurt you." And I thought that was a really interesting line, because it shows that there is still something in Ambrose that cares for Rollins. And I thought that was a really interesting line, so I wondered whether it was maybe a little bit of a, yeah, you know what, these two hate each other right now, but like they're sowing the seeds for the fact that like they're not going to be apart forever.
No, not at all, but I felt like this was the wrong move to make, because Seth Rollins hates this guy right now. Why is he teaming up with him to take out Lashley, of all people?
Yeah, like, I totally agree.
I don't mind him teaming up with a heel. If he teamed up with Lashley to take out Ambrose, I would have been absolutely fine with that, because it would have made sense for Seth Rollins to do that. It made no sense for Seth Rollins to want to work together with Dean Ambrose at the minute.
Yeah, I agree. I think the match then improved. I think Leo's first interference segment was fantastic. There was a little bit too much after that, I will agree. But by the end, when Lashley won and became the IC champ, I ended the match thinking, yeah, that was a pretty good match. I was more than happy to have watched it.
I know it's a title change, and a title change always gets a reaction, but I was kind of blown away by how into the finish the crowd were, because they popped huge for Lashley winning the title.
It was quite a good finishing segment as well. The way that it was orchestrated, I did quite like it.
Yeah.
And it's cool for Lashley. The only thing I will say, Leo Rush is a fantastic manager for Lashley. I just think he needs to do a little more with his look. He looks very plain, and I think his gimmick as the
Hype man.
I forgot the wording, the hype man for Lashley, I think that's great. He just needs to do a little bit more for it.
So we then had the worst segment of the week, possibly, but then we've got SmackDown to come on to, but we'll touch on that later. This was just, like, I'm looking at my notes now, and literally all I've wrote is weird Alexa segment with no top.
I have awful Alexa locker room segment. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think you pretty much covered it. There was just a guy with coffee came into Alexa's locker room. She somehow didn't hear the knocking and then accused him of not knocking when he walked in. She didn't have a top on, and she was covering her breasts with that top.
She wasn't annoyed at the pervert cameraman either.
Well, as we all know, only Jerry the King Lawler can see these invisible cameramen.
Yeah, it was. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we look at the other WWE TV this week. They're clearly trying to be as edgy as they can be at the moment. And I think edgy for them means, oh, look, let's make women slightly into objects again. Let's go for it.
Women's evolution, everybody.
Trademark.
So we then had the moment of bliss segment. This was cool for about 2 seconds because Alexa unveiled the women's tag team titles, which I absolutely love the look of. I think they're already one of my favourite titles in WWE.
They will grow on me. I don't dislike them. I just haven't grown to like them yet. But I don't dislike them. They're nice looking.
So 6 teams will compete inside the Elimination Chamber. 3 from Raw, 3 from SmackDown to crown the first ever women's tag team champions. Good way to start it. My money's on Sasha and Bayley. I don't know about you.
Especially if it builds into a larger story between the two of them, then yeah, I think so. I wouldn't mind seeing Riot Squad perhaps get them. I wouldn't mind seeing Iconics go quite far in that, because I think the Iconics are fantastic. But yeah, I think Bayley and Sasha probably, unless that match forms part of their
breakup story that's been going on
2.5 year long storyline.
So then, like, this felt like it should be a segment on its own, and then all of a sudden Paul Heyman came out, which was really, really weird, and he was Bliss's guest. So I don't know really what was going on there, but he came out and he cut a promo, and I know you didn't mind this promo, but I think this may be the worst Paul Heyman promo I've ever heard. Like, he literally sat there, and apart from putting over Drew McIntyre a little bit, he kind of said nothing.
I think I liked it because it was Heyman, and when it's Heyman, I always expect something good. You are right, it wasn't what we've come to expect from Heyman, but when you compare Heyman to a lot of the mic talkers on the show, I think Heyman could talk about his weekly shop, and it would be more entertaining than some people on the mic currently. This for another week, the Moment of Bliss segment sucked.
Yeah,
it just went nowhere.
Talking of that, this segment was weird because it felt jarring going from the women's tag team titles to Paul Heyman talking about nothing all that much. We had no idea how weird it was about to get, because Otis Dozovic from NXT, part of the Heavy Machinery tag team, who were quite a good and fun tag team in NXT, came out, was making very uncomfortable noises, very uncomfortable to watch on TV, and then started screaming "Pretty Lady" at Alexa in a weird voice. This was utterly bizarre, and whose idea was this as somebody's debut?
I have a fair idea whose idea this was.
Does his initials
VKM?
Yeah.
Yes, the Voodoo Kin Mafia.
That's Billy.
That's a weird reference. Anyone, if you don't know what that is, Google that one.
Or don't. Save yourself the trouble. So that was the end of the segment, and even the end of the segment couldn't be any weirder, because is it Greg Hamilton who's the Raw ring announcer?
Yeah, it was smooth, wasn't it?
Greg Hamilton just starts announcing the main event. The camera's still on Heyman and Alexa, and they're just like, well, I guess we're done.
And just put the mics down and
Yeah,
go,
walk
oh,
away.
we'll walk backstage then.
There was another awkward segment like that on SmackDown, but we'll get to that. So just they're throwing a lot of weird stuff around at the minute. It's WWE TV feels very different right now. They said they were going to change things up, and it feels very different, but very different in a weird way. So that set up the main event. Greg Hamilton's announcements did, not Otis Dozovic coming out and talking in a funny voice.
Is he in charge of the show?
Otis Dozovic?
No.
Oh, Greg Hamilton.
Apparently he decides when things happen.
Well, apparently Ruby Riott can book matches, so why can't Greg Hamilton just start the show whenever he wants to?
Anarchy in the WWE. It's happened, people.
So Finn Balor won the Fatal 4-Way match and will be facing Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. I thought this was a very good main event. Very fun match. Finn Balor wins in a cool closing segment with a coup de grace on John Cena. Pins Cena clean in the middle of the ring. Big win for Balor. He's had an awesome week when you think about it, and we'll go on to other things later. But Cena endorsed him after the match and put him over as he was one more of Balor Club. One more member.
Yeah, I think this was a good match. It wasn't great or anything like that, but as a TV main event, I thought it was really good. I was glad Balor won because he should have been pushed so much more than he is for a very, very long time. And it was interesting that he beat Cena. Of all the people, he beat Cena. Perhaps he was the one that could afford to take the fall most because he's John Cena. But at the same time, beating Cena is still a big deal. It's still a big deal.
I think they felt they needed to make Balor feel like a big star on the show, hence why they had him overcome Vince, hence why they had him overcome Jinder and win 2 matches in one night, and hence why, instead of the usual pinning Baron Corbin, which is what I expected going into this, the winner to do, regardless of who it was, he pinned John Cena to get that big sort of push going into the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and then Cena endorsed him after the match, which I know you liked. I felt it was a little bit forced, but it didn't offend me or anything like that, but it did feel a little bit forced of like, hey, this is the guy, cheer for him now.
It just feels like they're doing everything they can to make sure Finn Balor feels like as big a star as possible going into the Rumble, and I have no problem with that.
Which they need to.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of work to do with Balor over the next week or so, but they've made good strides. But if they'd booked him well for like the last year before this, then they wouldn't have this problem.
Very, very true. So the viewership for this week, Raw drew 2.72 million viewers over the course of the 3 hours, which was up 17% from last week. But that's not a surprise given there was no Clemson-Alabama game going against them. Now football season's over, we will naturally see a pickup in the ratings. But a lot of people have been talking about how this is a good bounce back for WWE. But actually, compared to last year's bounce back, it wasn't that good. Last year they drew 3.25 million, so that's still a loss of 500,000 fans. I think there were 600,000 down on last week, so they've not narrowed the gap.
So that's pretty much a consistent amount of fans that have just stopped watching.
And that's 500,000.
And there's a lot of reasons to.
That's huge.
Unfortunately, the last year there's been a lot of reasons for people to just stop watching.
So we move on now to WWE SmackDown, and we opened with a segment I did enjoy the backstage part of, where Becky came in her SUV. She chucked her keys at Kayla Braxton, who couldn't catch him, and turned around and said, "Nice catch," which was a cool little line. And then another weird Otis segment where the New Day and Heavy Machinery are getting together around what looks like they're making a protein shake. They're putting in pancakes and pancake syrup, which is not what I would put in my protein shake, but whatever. They then put tuna and eggs with shells still on.
Does Otis need help?
Probably. Certainly on the main roster anyway.
Funny how that works.
He was just steaks and weights when he was in NXT, but here he is with tuna and uncracked eggs. Anyway, they make what looks like the most disgusting protein shake of all time, and if anybody's had a protein shake, they're not very nice to start with. Otis drinks it, much to the chagrin of the New Day and his tag team partner Tucker Knight, and seems to think it's okay. Becky turns up, and Xavier, I love the bit where Xavier unzipped his jumper to unveil a The Man t-shirt.
Of course Xavier is a Becky Lynch fan. Of course he is.
It was like he was meeting his idol, even though he's known her for years.
He was meeting his idol. He was meeting The Man.
She takes a gulp of Otis's lovely drink and says, it's a bit weak. And she makes her way to the ring. I thought that was all cool. It was just a fun little backstage segment. There was nothing there to be anything massive, but I just thought it was a fun segment, and it makes Becky more relatable, and she's already really relatable anyway. So she comes down to a massive ovation, and she cuts a promo. Now, I'm going to discuss this promo in two halves, because I really did not like the first half, and I really, really liked the second half. I love Becky Lynch. Let me just preface that with saying I've been a Becky Lynch fan since she was Rebecca Knox in 2006 and she was having banging matches in Shimmer. Like, I've, for a long, long time, been a huge fan of Becky Lynch. So don't take this as a criticism of Becky Lynch. But this promo, to me, the start of it, she just kind of talks about how over she is. And I did not really like that. She talked about how over she was and how over everybody else wasn't. And it didn't work for me. When she's doing pot shots on Twitter, it's fine. But it felt a bit... I didn't like it. But then she goes on to cut a promo about Asuka and talking about how she was all this hype coming into WrestleMania, but when she went into WrestleMania, she lost to Charlotte Flair, somebody who Becky Lynch has been beating all summer. So once we got to that part of the promo, I really liked it. Asuka came out and said that Becky was too much like a buzzy bee with no sting, and that she would prove at the Royal Rumble, that she would no longer be living in Charlotte Flair's shadow, she'd be living in Asuka's shadow.
Yeah, I agree with you. The second half of the promo was a lot stronger than the first. The first part of the promo doesn't really work in that it's sort of like the bad bits of when Punk was trying to do this stuff where he wasn't putting himself over. He was sort of more burying people. And Becky's not there to bury people. She's there to point out how she is the man and the greatest female wrestler that they have on their roster. The second part of it was fantastic, and what she said about Asuka and how, Asuka was broken by her defeat to Charlotte, and how, well, can't be that bad because she's been beating Charlotte all summer. That bit was fantastic, and I am very much looking forward to their match. I'm just scared about where they're going with it.
So the Iconics then came out and cut a typical Iconics promo. They sort of wound up both Becky and Asuka. I feared for so long while they were cutting this promo, I was thinking they're going to do the typical tag team match between the two baby faces who are facing off against each other for the title at the next pay-per-view. But they surprised me.
If only Teddy Long had been there.
Yeah, it would have been a tag team match player. But Becky eventually challenged one of them a match. Peyton Royce got in the ring, and you know what? They had a fine match, but it went far too long. I think it went through 2 ad breaks.
You have got to be kidding me.
No, I think it went through 2 ad breaks.
Did it go that long?
Yeah, I was watching it. I didn't watch the show live, so I watched it the next day, and I was fast-forwarding through, but I'm sure I fast-forwarded through 2 advert breaks.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it only went like 8-9 minutes, but it was too long a match anyway, and Becky did not need to be in there having a match where she sold for 80% of the match to Peyton Royce. She needed to go in there, she needed to tear her arm off and tell Asuka that was what she was going to do at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, very quick, short match. Snap the disarmer on. And that should have been it.
Yeah. And then Asuka had the match that Becky should have had. Once Becky had won, she then challenged the other member of the Iconics, Billie Kay, who wanted no part of it, but Asuka didn't really give her a choice. And I guess the referees have matchmaking abilities now as well, because she just rolls an unwilling participant into the ring, and the referee just starts the match. So I guess the referees are now in charge as well in this chaotic universe.
Anarchy in the WWE, I've told you. It's here.
So Asuka does what Becky should have done and just beats Billie Kay in no time whatsoever, teases the disarm her to sort of wind Becky up, and nearly loses the match because of it with a roll-up, but quickly locks on the Asuka lock and taps her out. This was exactly what it needed to be. Becky and Asuka then have a little bit of a face-off. Asuka raises the title. It seems like cool at the end of the segment, and then all of a sudden AJ Styles music hits. And in yet another weird thing that they're doing at the minute, AJ Styles comes out. Both women leave the ring at the same time and just kind of walk up the ramp together in the background. AJ walks all the way around the ring, climbs over the barricade, walks up the stairs, high-fives a few fans, stands at the top of the stairs, and then makes his way through the curtain. And Tom Phillips says, "Please join us next." And I'm thinking, what for?
Like the opposite to last week, where Brian was already at the concession stand. We didn't see Brian come out and then just walk up some stairs and then be at the concession stand.
He had to walk
it's just bad. It's bad shooting. It's bad cinematography.
He had to walk all the way around the ring before you even start climbing the stairs. Well, I have no idea what they were going for here. No idea.
There must have been a shortcut.
Well, you would think. But he took the long cut. Anyway. So we meet AJ at the concession stand. This was a cool little segment where he kind of riled the fans up, talked about hot dogs, and sort of played the babyface. Then all of a sudden Brian came out and punched him out of nowhere. That was cool. I like seeing Brian punch people. It's always fun.
Yeah, just seeing Brian be violent towards people.
Yeah, he has a tendency to kick people's heads in, I've heard. Anyway, not the point. We can't say that on this show. And if, at the end of the day, AJ got the upper hand in the brawl and put Brian through the table, and Brian got mustard all over himself. He's going to be so frustrated.
Yeah, this was a fine segment. It built towards their match, the Royal Rumble. Absolutely no problem with it. The only thing that I will say is that I found it, I don't know if you found the same, I found it very, very difficult to make out what AJ Styles was actually saying. The crowd was really fired up by what he was saying.
Which was great.
I think
but,
hot dogs.
Yeah, but it made the segment, like I think you were saying there, a little bit off because you couldn't quite hear what AJ was saying at times. I had similar problems last week with Brian's promo, but it was to a much, much lesser degree. This one, they were peeking the mic all the time, and it was just, I don't think that type of segment works. But as a segment itself, I thought it was good.
The fact that they are trying different things, whether some of them hit, some of them miss, at least they're trying, and sometimes it feels like they haven't tried for so long. At least they are trying.
Yeah, that's very true, definitely. Next, we come on to probably my least favourite storyline of 2019 already. I don't think it's going to be beaten. The Usos are shooting what I assume was sort of some photos to hype up the Royal Rumble, whatever they were doing, and then some guy comes out and gives, I think it's Jimmy, the gift. Is it Jimmy or Jay? I think it's Jimmy.
I want to say it's Jimmy.
Yeah. Gives him a gift. Jay takes it out of his hands in the most weird way possible, talks about how it looks like his wife wants to hook up tonight, which I don't know why his brother's so excited about that. That's just a little bit creepy. But then
they are twins, I suppose.
That makes it no better.
It makes it even creepier.
He gets to the end anyway and is very confused when it's by Mandy Rose. And then he asks his brother what he's going to do. And I would be thinking, I wouldn't even ask that question. I would expect my brother to do the right thing. But then Jimmy replies and goes, I don't know.
Yeah, well, what do you think, brother? Are you going to have this affair? I don't know. It's a tough decision. I shall have to make a list. It's just awful. It's awful, awful, awful. It is by far the worst storyline of 2019, which admittedly is not very long, but it's going to take quite a lot to beat this one. It is awful, and it makes Mandy look stupid, and it makes, most importantly, the good guys look stupid and not like good guys.
Yeah. So another weird debut, I guess you could call it, as Joe's walking towards the ring for his match with Mustafa Ali. We see EC3 flexing and looking at himself in the mirror. Joe kind of stops and looks at him with a confused face, and I was thinking, is Joe the representation of the WWE Universe here?
I mean, genuinely, are people getting more airtime backstage than in the ring nowadays?
Well, we haven't seen EC3 in the ring, so definitely for EC3 and Lacey Evans.
Maybe that's where they see his future as.
What?
He's a backstage guy.
He flexes backstage.
Yeah, that's his gimmick.
Cool.
That's the kind of thing they'll go for, possibly.
Yeah. So we then had Andrade, who has lost the Cien and the Almas. He's managed to lose 2 names. I mean, even Neville only lost 1.
And Cesaro.
And Big E. Anyway, he's lost 2. Poor guy. Don't know where they misplace all the names, but never mind. But him and Zelina Vega, who still has 2 names, cut a very good promo. Very good promo. And definitely fired me up to see the match. I kind of was disappointed we were seeing Andrade versus Rey on TV because I wanted them to build it towards Mania, and maybe they still will, but we'll see more going forward. But I thought it was a very good promo. And then we saw Joe attacking Ali before their match. So Mustafa Ali made his entrance and Joe attacked him from behind and kind of laid a massive beat down on him. I thought it was really cool. And then Joe came back down and I was like, it's still pretty cool. And then Joe came back down again and the fans were chanting one more time. And the heat that Joe was getting at the start was now turning to cheers. And they just stop doing this. They've been doing it for so long where they have guys come back and keep attacking because they want heat.
Overkill.
But then the crowd just goes, well, I guess this is pretty cool. We're seeing one guy beat another guy up. I'll go for it.
Also, seeing Joe take him by surprise and sneak attack him, that gets heat for a little bit, and it gets sympathy from Mustafa Ali, who's been very, very good since he came on to SmackDown, and we've praised him a lot. The problem is that the longer it goes on, the more it looks like Joe's just actually beating him up and is just a much stronger guy, and that doesn't help Ali. That doesn't make him look good as a babyface. And you're right, if someone's beating the life out of someone and clearly showing how tough they are, after a while you're going to go, you know what, actually, this is pretty cool. Go on, Joe.
Yeah. And that's where they end up. So we went backstage and we've got Mandy and Sonia there, and I'll be dead honest, I can't remember. I think Sonia said something about scandalous. I really wasn't paying that much attention here.
Yeah, Sonia basically said, like, Mandy, like, what are you doing? And Mandy kind of just said, oh, I'm just, like, creating controversy or any of that rubbish.
Was she Eric Bischoff all of a sudden?
Yeah, controversy creates cash, I've heard. Yeah. This was one of those where this was on the show.
We then saw a Samoa Joe promo, and I swear Samoa Joe can cut a promo about anything, but he's talking about how he's going to win the Royal Rumble, and he cuts just this amazing promo backstage. Joe is severely underutilized and is so good and deserves so much more. Hopefully they do something with him this year.
He is well, when we talk about the end of year awards at the moment, he could be well in with the most underused wrestler.
Yeah.
He's a main eventer.
He came very close to winning most underutilized for me last year, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him in the running again this year. We then came on to what could be classed as segment of the week if we were counting matches, but I don't think we are, so we're going to bypass that. Andrade versus Rey Mysterio. This was an absolute classic. They went out there, I think they wrestled for about 18 minutes, and they tore the house down. They then rebuilt it and tore it down again. It was amazing. Apart from Corey Graves waxing lyrical about the Canadian Destroyer for about 13 minutes straight, which admittedly was really cool. And it's cool to see the Canadian Destroyer in WWE because it's not something we ever thought we'd see. But there was so much more to this match than that, and they told a really good story. The crowd was super into it. And Andrade won with a top rope hammerlock DDT after a distraction, mind you. But Andrade won again, and he got another big win, and that's awesome for Andrade.
I think one of the big reasons that Andrade is suddenly being pushed is that they were starting to get scared that they would lose him too.
There'd been rumours of that he wanted to leave and he wasn't happy, so I wonder whether that is where they've went with this, and maybe that's where we'll see them go with the revival.
Yeah. One of the good things is, like, it's great that Andrade got a win over Rey. The only thing that's a shame about it is that I think we both talked last week about how we kind of saw this as a WrestleMania match. Maybe it still will be because there was cheating involved for the finish. Maybe that still will be where they go with it. Maybe with some kind of stipulation. We don't know. But it's good that this happened, and it's good that Andrade now, actually got a win and got a big win and continued that push. But it's a shame that we may not see it as a WrestleMania match.
So then we see the conclusion of the Jimmy Uso and Mandy Rose story, and could this get much worse?
I both fell asleep and got annoyed all at once, really.
Yeah. So Jimmy feigns confusion over whether they go in or not. Don't know why. And then he goes into the room, and Mandy's there, and she's in her negligee, and she takes her robe off.
Wearing more than when she wrestles, as you correctly said earlier.
Yes. And a paparazzi guy pops out of what I assume was the bathroom and takes pictures, and Jimmy's like, what's going on? And Mandy then reveals her big plan that she never really liked Jimmy all along, and this is all a ruse to get at Naomi, and she's going to ruin Naomi's life because nobody actually watches their own product, so why would Naomi actually know what's going on?
The main thing about this segment, as well as just the horrific acting and the horrific idea behind
God, it was bad.
The horrific, acting and the idea behind the segment itself, is that do we actually know why Mandy doesn't like Naomi?
Don't think that's ever been established.
She just has no reason.
Yeah.
Other than the one thing that she did mention is that she feels like she's hotter and better looking. And we have mentioned that they are starting to revert a little bit to stereotypes. Yeah, because all women care about is looking better than each other. This was horrendous. It was edgy in all of the wrong ways. And the fight afterwards,
oh God,
was even worse.
I nearly forgot about that. Yeah, so Naomi comes in, and she's in full-on wrestling gear. Full-on wrestling gear.
She was ready.
And did Mandy even have any shoes or anything on, or slippers or anything?
No, she had
so she was barefoot.
And
I think she'd put a robe back on, but it wasn't fully on or whatever. So she's in no shape to fight. And she ends up getting the better of Naomi by throwing her over a chair, and the chair fell over, and Naomi kind of rolled into the corner. And then Jimmy comes in and says something to the effect of, well, you really got her there, girl.
No, you got your backside handed to you. Yeah.
This was similar to the Rusev situation last week, where the babyface gets beat up and just looks like a complete and utter tool.
I mean, obviously, Mandy needs to start wrestling barefoot and in lingerie because she performed better in terms of storyline than she ever has. Maybe that's where she needs to go next. This was just awful. It needs to end now and just get off of anything that I watch in wrestling for the rest of this year.
So then we go to the ring for the Shane McMahon birthday celebration bash, hosted by The Miz. Yeah.
I'm starting to turn on this now.
Good, finally you're coming around. Yeah, this was no good. I think this was the point in my notes where I wrote, this show has fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, it started off really, really good. It started, well, not really, really good, but sort of decent, as SmackDowns tend to.
Yeah.
And then it just slowly tailed off to the point where you're struggling to get through the rest of it.
It peaked with the awesome, what should have been main event of Andrade versus Rey, and then just died a death from there on out with the Mandy and Jimmy segment and then this segment. So, long story short, Miz is out there praising Shane. There's a video package. He gives him some Jordans, which was kind of cool. And he said he can wear it with whatever colour gear we're going to wear at the Rumble. So, you know what? I didn't mind that bit. That was kind of cool, team bonding. He then starts to sing happy birthday to Shane. The crowd's into it, which I guess is a good thing, but it was doing nothing for me. And thankfully, the bar interrupt. And they come out and say, why weren't they invited? They're the tag team champions after all, which apparently is a prerequisite for getting invited to a birthday party. Not something I knew. And then
we've never been tag team champions, though.
Well, we're tag team champions of the world, aren't we? So,
are we? Cool. We should get some belts.
Yeah,
we should get some belts.
2-man booth belts. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the way soon. Anyway, so the bar come out and, like I say, interrupt with all this, and then interject to say, why wasn't Vince invited? But then he was invited, but he didn't want to turn up because he doesn't care about Shane. And they went a little bit shooty, but then they could have built on that, but they didn't. So it kind of became a nothing promo until Shane volunteered The Miz for a match against Sheamus. And at this point, I'm going, here we go. We're setting up the turn. But Miz apparently was into it and said it was Shane's birthday gift. And then he beat Sheamus in what was somehow the main event of this show. Andrade versus Rey was not the main event, and Sheamus versus Miz in what was like a 6-minute match when nothing happened for 5.5 minutes was the main event. It made no sense to me. The finish came when Shane pulled Cesaro off the apron through a table and I think some cake, and then Miz rolled up Sheamus for the win. Sheamus attacked post-match and Shane came in and threw some awful looking punches, and they brawled, and the babyfaces guess kind of 2-on-1'd the heels, which, whatever. At this point, I don't even care enough to argue. Miz hit the skull-crushing finale, pulled him to the corner. Shane went for the coast-to-coast, and Miz held up some cake that hadn't been destroyed in front of Sheamus's face. End scene.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm starting to turn on this angle now. I no longer like it, but at the same time, I am desperate to not to see either Shane turn on Miz or Miz turn on Shane. Because for heaven's sake, I have seen it before. I have no desire to see that angle again with just different people plugged into it. I have no desire to see it. Hopefully Miz and Shane don't win at the Rumble. I have a feeling they're going to, though, if they're going to stay together. But I'd rather Bar just won and kept their reign going. But this is now at the point where I don't actively want to see this anymore. It's now at the point where it was a novelty at first. I'm now sick of it.
So the viewership for SmackDown this week was 2.16 million, which was up 6% from last week, but not as big a growth as Raw, and massively down from the 2.6 million they drew last year. They really need to turn this ship around before they get to Fox.
They've trained people to think of SmackDown as the number 2 show. That's the problem. When you train people to think that, even when SmackDown's better, and SmackDown on the whole has been better than Raw for quite a while now.
But in autumn or fall for our American listeners, they're going to Fox. It's going to be the A show. They're going to be on network television. It needs to be the A show.
Do you think they'll treat it like that?
They're going to have to, otherwise it's not going to last very long.
But there's the prestige of Monday Night Raw. It is the TV show. It is the longest weekly episodic TV show. Raw is WWE. It's going to be so strange to see how they balance that out.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to have to go heavy on SmackDown being the A brand, and they're going to have to make it clear that it's the A brand.
Is SmackDown 2 hours on
yes,
Fox?
on Fox, yes.
Right, good, because I just can't watch another 3-hour wrestling show. I just don't have time or the energy Or
the
sometimes
will.
the enjoyment.
Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. So we've got NXT up next, and NXT and 205 Live were kind of shows that were there this week, so we won't spend too much time on them. But we opened up with the Street Profits, who were super over, as they always are, and they were fighting two guys who looked like they were from Greece. They're such a fun tag team to watch, though, the Street Profits, and they then ended up winning this match with a big boy frog splash. Like, he nearly touched the ceiling. That was how high that frog splash was. And Ford's frog splash was just amazing. It was a squash match, but it was a good re-debut for the Street Profits. And after the match, they were attacked by the Forgotten Sons. And they kind of laid them out. And I guess we're going into a rivalry with them.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. New storyline going forward. The Forgotten Sons are no longer forgotten and actually get to do something.
Unless you're the NXT audience who chanted, "We forgot you."
Irony. Oh, irony. But we'll see where that goes. Anyone getting opportunities in NXT is a good thing, and we'll see where it goes.
You know, the Forgotten Sons, apart from that chant, got really good heat. And you know what? I still like Wesley Blake.
Yeah, Blake and Murphy were great way back when they had Alexa was their manager as well. So anytime that Blake may get an opportunity, great.
We then moved on to a backstage promo with Matt Riddle and Keith Lee. And I just love how they're letting Matt Riddle be Matt Riddle. Like, this was the most Matt Riddle promo you could come up with.
You mean letting people almost be themselves is a good idea?
Yeah, stranger things have happened.
Someone go tell Vince.
So he basically said he couldn't corner Keith Lee tonight because he was not medically cleared, which played into the angle at the end of the show. We then got a cool promo sort of vignette with Aleister Black where he said he was going to absolve Tommaso Ciampa of his sins.
And there are many of those for Ciampa.
And he was going to take back his title at TakeOver Phoenix. And Black always feels so cool. And he said that he wanted Ciampa next week. We shall see.
Yeah, I think I think Black wants a fight.
Yeah. Strange. It's almost like he wants to kick his head off.
Does he have a reason to, like?
I don't know. Bianca Belair then came out next, and she cut a nice promo in the ring. You know, she feels really natural on the mic. I think she stumbled once, but apart from that, she was really natural, and I'm not going to criticize anybody for stumbling. She then was interrupted by Shayna Baszler, and Shayna came down, and Shayna's just awesome. She's got, you know, similar how we talked about Aleister Black last week. She's got kind of an aura to her, Shayna Baszler.
Just gets who she is. Yeah. She really does. And she carries herself so well. And she's, you know, how we talked about when we talked about Wrestle Kingdom, we talked about how Zack Sabre Jr. is different to everybody on the same show that he's on.
Yeah.
Shayna Baszler is exactly the same. Whatever show she's on, you will not see another match like hers. A Shayna Baszler match, whether you like her or not, and I'm a big fan, is very, very different. And I love her style of wrestling.
Yeah. So Shayna cuts a really good promo, and she's talking about it was weird. I wonder if they taped this out of sequence, because I feel like we got the overrated versus undefeated chants last week, but yet this felt like the birth of them when Shayna said something to the effect of, you're going to have to change your vocabulary after TakeOver, and you're going to have to stop calling yourself undefeated and call yourself overrated.
Yeah, it caught on immediately,
yes.
Didn't it? And
well, the crowd
was like, "Oh, cool."
Yeah, it was almost like the crowd went ooh, and then started sort of dueling, chanting it, and it felt like this was the birth of it. But I feel like we heard it last week, so I don't know whether they taped out a sequence, but it's matterless, really. It was a cool segment, and it ended with Bianca slapping Shayna and getting out of dodge before the rest of the horsewomen could attack her.
Smart babyface.
Yeah, I'm not sure Bianca's full babyface. She's kind of tweening.
But
you know what?
Yeah.
She is the babyface for this match, and she played it smart here. And it's nice to see babyfaces not being stupid for once.
Yeah, this was a really good. Shayna was Shayna, and Shayna's going to be fantastic no matter what. But it built Bianca up to be smart and to show that she's tough as well. In that, you know what, she was in the ring with 3 other women, all of whom would have been more than happy to beat the life out of her, and she was more than willing to give Shayna a slap across the face.
Next we got, now let me make sure I get this right, we got Dominik Dijakovic.
Yeah, that's American pronunciation, though. I don't believe that's how we would. I believe we would pronounce it.
Dijakovic. Dijakovic. It's a bit of a mouthful for a wrestler, to be honest. I don't know what the problem with Donovan Dijak was. I really don't. But That's malice. He was facing a guy who I'd seen a couple of times on NXT, but never in any lengthy matches. And I feel like I've forgotten his first name, but his second name was Jowd. And he works a really interesting style. I Googled him while I was watching the match and found out that he was 37, so not a massive upside there. But he is still quite green, but he works kind of like an amateur wrestling sort of MMA style, sort of really weird judo kind of gimmick in the ring. And he was working it early on, and he got the better of Dijakovic. And the match was still relatively short, but it wasn't a squash because they let Jowd get quite a bit in and look quite good early on. But Dijakovic came to win in the end with the Feast Your Eyes. It was a good match for him, but it made Jowd look good at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they do more competitive matches. They've mentioned that there's opportunities going forward because there's obviously now spaces within the NXT roster because people have left. More opportunities may mean more competitive matches to start and re-establish that order of things in NXT. More than happy with this match. See how things go going forward for both.
Yeah, we got a cool War Raiders promo next. I think they were in like a forest or a wood area and there was burning torches and stuff. And they basically talked about how they were going to beat the Undisputed Era, take over and take the tag team titles. This is what makes NXT different because everybody feels like individual characters. Like you would never see Undisputed Era cutting the promo in the location the way the War Raiders do, whereas everybody on Monday Night Raw and Tuesday Night SmackDown or SmackDown Live feels very similar. It was a cool promo.
Yeah, everyone needs to feel different. Everyone needs to feel unique, and War Raiders felt exactly that. You are correct in that Undisputed Era have their very clear way in which they cut their promos, and it's very NWO, like we've said that to each other on several occasions. And everyone's got to feel unique. People are different. It's almost like that should happen in wrestling too.
So next we had Johnny Gargano come out, and he had a really, really fun match with Humberto Carrillo. It was low-key, super, super fun. Like, really good match. It was short. It was to the point. Gargano got the win and he didn't even use his finisher to do it. I think he used the slingshot DDT to beat him. But it was a really fun match and Humberto actually looked really good in the short time he was in there.
Yeah, he's clearly someone that's got promise and we'll come on to him a little bit later as well with what we look at next. You know that I'm a massive, massive fan of Gargano's current character. He's not a good guy, not a bad guy, but he has a lot more edges of being a bad guy at the moment. So, this was a good match. Gargano was absolutely fantastic. Gargano gets a win, continues his steam as we go towards TakeOver. I am very much looking forward to Gargano against Ricochet, which was officially confirmed on this week's NXT. And that should be fantastic. And we said this just before we came on, I do believe and I think Johnny Gargano can't lose this match.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure Ricochet is ready to lose that title either.
It also doesn't play into the story they're telling because you've got to believe they're doing Ciampa Gargano at Mania weekend. It feels like that's where they're going. And
it shouldn't be a title unification.
It shouldn't be a unification match.
Like, that title's great as a secondary belt. Yeah. Don't get rid of it.
But it feels like Gargano needs to win this match.
If he's going to lose it, he's got to lose it in some way that sets up him versus Ciampa. Whether it's something that leads to, like, Gargano returning to that, not Johnny wrestling, but getting closer away from the heel side of things.
I've got faith in them. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I believe in Johnny wrestling.
So Ciampa then cut a promo and he said he did not want to fight early, but then he warned Aleister Black that be careful what you wish for. So I think we may see some kind of skirmish between them next week. And then we had our main event, Cassius Ohno versus Keith Lee. This was a fun main event. I had one spot that I loved where Cassius Ohno does like a drop down like you do during an Irish whip segment and trips Keith Lee, who falls into the turnbuckles. That was really cool. And then Ohno hits him with a low blow and wins with the roaring elbow. Fine match. Fine main event. Keeps Ohno strong because he's facing Riddle at TakeOver. And, you know, it gives Lee a reason why he lost.
Yeah. Kind of like last week. We talked about last week it being a fine main event. Nothing blow away, nothing amazing, but more than fine as a main event for TV. I think for Ohno, gives him some steam going into TakeOver, where I'm sure he's going to get beaten by Matt Riddle. But, that's Ono's role now. He's the guy that's
He's the gatekeeper.
Yeah, people come in, he wrestles them, they get over. Not that Matt Riddle wouldn't get over without Cassius Ono. But yeah, no problems with it. Let's see where they go with everything next week.
And just to set that up, Riddle tried to attack Ono post-match, and Ono got out of dodge. This was a nice show. Felt like an old school NWA show, to be honest. NWA show, to be honest, because it was very old school in the sense that not a great deal happened, but it was a fun show.
Yeah, nothing massively was built. Nothing humongous happened. But it was a good TV show, and it was inoffensive, and there was nothing... there was nothing like, for example, on Raw and SmackDown where I was actively put off by what was on the screen.
So we'll move on to 205 Live next. And we had Lio Rush versus Lince Dorado in the opening match. So Lio wins a fine match, and it kind of furthers the Lio versus Lucha House Party sort of storyline. He attacked Lince after the match, and then the remaining members of Lucha House Party came out to make the save, and Lio ran away through the crowd.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more we need to say. I think Leo's a fantastic heel. He's obviously a great manager for Lashley over on Raw, but in the Cruiserweight division, he's a more than serviceable heel, and he really gets his, sort of Floyd Mayweather, money character. He gets it. He's very good in that role. I think he should be moving higher up the 205 roster, but yeah, more than happy with it. Good start.
We had Noam Dar backstage, and he cut a decent promo about beating Nice last week. Nice interrupted, and they kind of had a bit of a back and forth, which seemed to set up Nice versus Dar for a third time. They are 1-1.
It's a rubber match. It would make sense.
Nice offered the match. I felt like at first Dar had accepted it, but then he ended the promo with saying, "But you lost." I'm not sure whether they were just trying to get that catchphrase over because he used it several times, or whether he was actually just turning down the match and we'll have to see something else to get there. I don't know, but it could have been maybe worded a little better, I think.
I think it just may have been a bit, not lost in translation, but just badly worded and not totally clear, because it would make a lot of sense to do a rubber match.
TJP came in and was continuing to be arrogant with Drake, and Drake basically said, I'll look for you for opportunities in the future, and TJP wouldn't even let him finish before he left the room. We then had Kalisto and Brian Kendrick on behalf of Akira Tozawa and Arya Daivari on behalf of Hideo Itami all cut promos leading into the Fatal 4-Way at the Rumble. Daivari's promo was really good. All of them were good, but Daivari stood out to me and kind of progressed the match that way. There will be a triple threat between the three Rumble contenders next week, which I don't really like because it feels like we're seeing the match before we see the match, just minus Buddy Murphy.
And someone's got to
do the job,
take the fall, which makes them look rubbish. Strange booking. I'm sure there were plenty of other things that they could do, but we'll see where they go.
Yeah. We then had Buddy Murphy's Open Challenge as the main event. Humberto Carrillo came out to answer the challenge. And you know what? I feel like this was meant to be a showcase match for Humberto, and it really did pick up in the last few minutes, but I felt like the Gargano match, and maybe it was because it was in front of a much hotter crowd because the crowd was dead for this match, but it felt like the Gargano match was more of a moment-making situation for Humberto than this was. But he did have a good run towards the end. The action really picked up. Buddy did pick up the win, but Carrillo got a standing ovation from the crowd after the match. So
yeah, I think a lot of the 205 Live matches are great, just need more heat, and that's the problem with where they run and how they organise, because 205 Live, I think, apart from NXT, is the best programming that WWE put out every single week, on the whole. Carino's clearly a promising wrestler. Hopefully we'll see more of him. He's going to be a full-time member of the Cruiserweight division, it would appear.
Yeah.
And we'll see where that goes down the line, because there are opportunities in that division. So let's see.
Yeah, it was a fine show, but nothing worth going out your way to see, really.
Like NXT, it was a solid show. It was there.
We had, on Saturday just gone, NXT UK TakeOver. This was a interesting show. We opened with the Grizzled Young Vets versus Moustache Mountain for the tag team titles. I liked this match, but I feel like a lot of people loved this match, and I didn't love it. I thought it was very good, but I didn't think it was great.
Yeah, I loved it. I think the build-up of the hot tags was fantastic. I really enjoyed some of the Grizzled Young Vets control segments. I think Zach Gibson is an absolutely fantastic wrestler. He reminds me of Nigel McGuinness more and more every time I see him.
Especially with his character work.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Adam and I have been big fans of him for quite a long time, back when he was working Progress and other companies in the UK. He should have been a bigger part of World of Sport when that had its first season. But yeah, I love this match. Fantastic match. An interesting decision to give Grizzled Young Vets the titles and have Mustache Mountain either chase or go up maybe to NXT and higher.
I think that's a really good booking decision. It gets Grizzled Young Vets over with a big win against a big name team, and for me, it frees Mustache Mountain to go on and do more important things than NXT UK. For me, we then had a shot of the Devlin Banks angle, which I thought was really well done. They attacked backstage, and was it at the hotel, wherever it was?
It was as Travis Banks arrived at the ballroom.
Right. Okay. So that was really cool. That was really well done, and then Banks makes his entrance and he's been cleared, so it seems like we've had we thought we might have a little bit of a bait and switch, but it doesn't seem like it's coming, and then all of a sudden Devlin comes out, Banks tries to attack him, Devlin gets the upper hand, and Banks cannot continue, so maybe the bait and switch is coming, and what a bait and switch it was. They announce that they have got a plan B. Finn Balor's music hits, and I'm not kidding you, that place erupted.
It was absolutely massive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was huge.
You know, Balor came out and said, huge ovation. The crowd kept doing all of Balor's actions with him. And I think we gave this our segment of the week this week.
Yeah.
It was absolutely fantastic. We loved it.
Yeah, the segment of the week being Balor.
Yeah,
just Balor.
Balor coming out and being crazy over. Because he's a great wrestler. I've loved him since New Japan in 2009. Great wrestler. Very capable and has star potential.
And you know what? The match was pretty good too. They had a pretty good match. It wasn't anything blow away, but it was a pretty good match. Balor won, but he made Devlin look strong in the process.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people criticise and say like that. You know, Devlin needed a win
against Balor, the guy who's going to
just in general.
Right, okay.
But at the same time, I don't see how Devlin almost beating Finn Balor, and he did.
Who's going to be facing Brock Lesnar for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble? Let's not forget.
I don't see how having a very competitive match with Finn Balor.
That hurts him.
I don't see how that hurts him. I think it helps him more than beating Travis Banks may have.
So Dave Mastiff versus Eddie Dennis in a proper brawl. This was way better than I expected it to be. It was don't get me wrong, it was nothing blow away, but I expected kind of a plodding match. They worked the stipulation really well, and they worked the stipulation into the storyline as well, which I really liked. It wasn't just weapons for weapons' sake. Everything played a role.
Yeah, it was a change of pace, and it was a good change of pace on the show because we had very technical wrestling matches. And it was a really good change of pace, and it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't on the standard of the other matches maybe, but it was fine. Eddie Dennis is more of a character guy and a promo guy. He's great at that. He was in Progress over the last year and a half, but good match. More than happy with it.
And Dave Mastiff picked up the win there. We then moved on to the NXT UK Women's Championship match. This was okay. It was Toni Storm versus Rhea Ripley. Rhea's got a lot of potential, but she's still got a long way to go. And I'll be very honest, the middle portion of this match dragged. It really dragged.
Yeah, I didn't like this as much. But I think the main thing for me was that it was Tony's moment.
Yeah.
And after all the things that she's been through in the last few weeks, it was great for her. She deserved it. She shouldn't be in NXT UK, though. We said this either last week or the week before. She is a main roster wrestler. She is as good as anybody on the main roster. She deserves to be there. NXT UK have just got a steal that she's still there.
And that was funny. That was in my notes too, because I literally just wrote Tony winning was cool, but like Mustache Mountain, she is too good for NXT UK.
Yeah, why is she there? She's brilliant, but why is she there?
And then we came on to the main event, which has really divided opinion. Pete Dunne versus Joe Coffey. A lot of people felt like this went far too long, and to a degree, I do agree with that sentiment. I do think you could have shaved a few minutes off this, but I think I liked it in complete opposition to what I thought of the opener. I think I liked it a lot more than most people. I thought this was the best match on the show, actually, and I thought Pete Dunne and Joe Coffey. Pete Dunne got the best match I've ever seen out of Joe Coffey, put it that way. Really good main event. Pete Dunne retains the title, and then out comes Valda.
Yeah, I agree. First I'll just talk about the match before I move on to Valda. But I didn't think the match was the best match on the show. I thought Mustache Mountain against Grizzled Young Vets was the best match on the show. But yeah, it's the best match I've ever seen Joe Coffey have. I really enjoyed it. Pete Dunne's fantastic. Easily one of the best wrestlers in the world. Again, great for NXT UK, but why is he there? He's a main roster wrestler. He's good enough. He should be there, and he should have been there for a long time. But I believe that's coming now very soon with the debut after the match of Walter, the German machine. Austrian. He's Austrian. But the Austrian machine, who is absolutely fantastic. And he is going to have a big impact on NXT UK. And I think he's quite possibly going to be the one that takes the title off of Pete Dunne.
Yeah, so he confronted Dunne after the match. Coffey tried to get back in the ring. Walter just booted him down like the badass that he is. And then we kind of had a stare down. Clearly this is where they're going. If you've not seen any Walter matches before, I suggest going to Over the Top Wrestling's YouTube channel, because they've got 2 free matches up that I know of because I've watched them both on there. One against Ospreay and one against Dragunov, I believe. That might have been in WXW. That might have been what I was thinking of. But either way, 2 amazing matches, and I would go out your way to check them out. He has got incredible in-ring charisma, and he is such an addition to that roster.
And he hits people really hard.
Oh, he chops people. He chops people. Look at Ilya Dragunov from the 16-karat gold tournament. I'm telling you, he chops people. So that's it for the WWE shows for this week. So we'll just move on to any other business. We'll just quickly touch on the only 2 shows I really think we need to touch on this week. So we had the Impact tapings that we talked about in Mexico City, which we talked about last week, and interesting results. So if you don't want to hear anything, just pause for about 30 seconds, or skip about 30 seconds forward from here, because we're only going to talk 2 results here. So you've had your warning. So the first result we're going to talk about is Taya Valkyrie retaining the Knockouts Championship against Tessa Blanchard, which was kind of interesting. Seemed like it was clean. I didn't see anything that said Gail got involved or anything like that. And then we had Johnny Mundo retaining his title. It was built up on TV and in the last tapings as if it was going to be a one-on-one match.
Yeah, absolutely. It was going to be a singles match against Cage.
And then all of a sudden it turned into a 4-way.
Who were the others in the 4-way then?
Cannot remember who. I want to say it was Killer Cross and Moose.
That would make sense. Killer Cross would certainly make sense. Moose may or may not make sense, but Killer Cross certainly does, because he's involved in the feud.
Yeah, I want to say it was them too, but I couldn't be honestly sure. My only thing is, was this a way to protect Cage? Because it feels really random that they went to a 4-way. So I wonder if they saw how over Cage was at the last set of tapings and thought, we don't want to beat him, we want to save that match for later.
Yeah, protect him and run with it, and have he be the one to take the belt off Johnny Mundo, or Johnny Impact.
Johnny Impact, yeah. I always forget that. And then we'll just quickly run through the Honor Reign Supreme show from ROH that I watched last weekend. This, much like NXT and 205 Live, was a fun show with very little consequence to it, really. So we started off with the Shinobi Shadow Squad beating Hollis, Skylar and Quinn in what was a fine opener, but, it's cheeseburger. What's it going to be? And then we had Mark Haskins get a big win against Beer City Bruiser in very quick fashion, just putting over him as a new star in the company. Really good win. Haskins looked impressive. We then had David Finlay and Juice Robinson, who, and if you don't want any spoilers, I would pause for about 15 seconds here, have formed a new faction at the TV tapings on ROH. And they defeated Best Friends in a good tag match. And the one thing that did stick out from this match is they're clearly building Trent versus Juice for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship. They made that very clear towards the end of the match.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. So we then had Tracy Williams defeat Flip Gordon by ref stoppage in what I mentioned earlier was a legitimate injury to Flip. So disappointing we didn't get this match. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Then we had the Kingdom defeat, as I said last week, the most random trios team of all time in the Hurricane, Luchasaurus and Delirious. You know what? This was fine. It probably went a little too long. Luchasaurus is really good.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He was in Lucha Underground.
I know some people don't like them, but the Kingdom I enjoy more and more every single time. So this was good. Bandido then defeated PJ Black, and you know what? As Bandido's big debut, this fell a little flat. There was quite a few botches in the match, but it was still a cool match. They worked well together outside of the botches, which I realise sounds strange, but the styles did complement each other. They just were off with a few spots. But a fine match, and Bandido picked up the win.
That's strange. It's strange as well, because PJ's not usually the kind of guy to have lots of botches.
No.
He's usually pretty smooth.
And you know what? Bandido still carried himself like a star. So, I'm not going to turn on him or anything like that. Mm-hmm. We then had what was meant to be a four-corner survival with Jeff Cobb against Rhett Titus, Shane Taylor, and Jonathan Gresham. Nearly forgot him there. But Shane Taylor decided not to be part of the match, which was really weird because it was a proven ground match to try and earn a TV title shot. So if you beat Jeff Cobb, you got an instant TV title shot. Not really sure why that happened. Shane Taylor's part of the sickness versus lifeblood angle in ROH, which is really not something we've seen a lot of on TV yet because it hasn't happened yet.
Who are the sickness?
The sickness seemed to be the Briscoes, Bully Ray, Silas Young, and Shane Taylor, and they're kind of like
that's interesting.
almost the cancer of ROH.
Like the prophecy.
Sort of. But like I say, because I've not seen any of the shows from the tapings yet, I can't confirm that. But I feel like the lifeblood's being set up to sort of counteract that. So we'll see where they go. Definitely interested in where that goes going forward. Silas actually distracted Cobb after the match, after Cobb had won the match, and Shane Taylor attacked him from behind. Right. The commentators are very anti-sickness, so it's clearly a big storyline for ROH going forward. We then had Kelly Klein defeat Jenny Rose in a Women of Honor World Championship match in a street fight. It was clunky for a lot of the match, but they really got the crowd into it towards the end, and they worked really hard. So, props to them for that. We then had probably the most insane match of the week. We had Villain Enterprises versus Silas Young and the Briscoe brothers. This was balls to the wall action from the start, and the one really standout great match on the show. I will say it had two spots that I nearly died watching because I saw PCO take a flat back bump from the top rope to the ring apron, and that was just sick. And then about 4 minutes later, I saw PCO take a very, very, very scary looking Canadian destroyer on the ring apron from Silas Young.
Yeah, I saw that. It was rough.
Yeah. Luckily, he was fine, and he ended up winning the match with a moonsault after Brody King had hit a big move and Marty Scurll had hit a big move. It was a really good match once I got over my fear that PCO was going to kill himself. I think that's something I'm going to have to get used to watching him. And then the main event was Dalton Castle versus Jay Lethal, but before we got there, Nick Aldis came out and kind of give us a bit more information about the Crockett Cup, but that wasn't the really interesting thing. He joined commentary, and I think it's clear we're building to Aldis versus Lethal for whether the championships are on the line or not, or whether they just do champion versus champion and do some kind of time limit draw, something very NWA-ish.
A time limit draw would fit really. If they're going to pull it off, then great. But that would be interesting.
So that was the main sort of substance to the main event, because the main event was actually quite short, and I think Dalton's still working with a lot of injuries, to be honest. It only went 15 minutes, and it didn't touch their match from 16th anniversary last year, which I absolutely adored. It was still fine. It was a good main event, but it was nothing to write home about, much like the rest of the show. So another good outing for ROH, but just a fun house show, really. Nothing major to talk about.
Yeah, I think as the year goes on and they have these more and more people coming in, they will build steam. But they need to start building it fairly quick, because AEW is going to get going.
We usually have a closing segment at about this point, but we've kind of almost hit 90 minutes, so are we still going to do it?
I think we'll talk for a couple of minutes. I think let's because I think we've got a really good one this time.
So we came up with, for our last sort of fun segment for this week, we're going to talk about the best junior heavyweights of all time.
So I'm gonna lead off on this because Japanese wrestling is very much my forte. As I mentioned on the first episode of this podcast, I'll throw the first one out there as the original Tiger Mask, Satoru Sayama. He's not necessarily my favourite, but I certainly believe he's the most influential. So much of what all Japanese junior heavyweights and just junior heavyweights around the world now do, and cruiserweights, comes from Satoru Sayama. His match with the Dynamite Kid, who's another that we'll mention, are absolutely iconic. If you haven't seen them, YouTube them. I'm sure they'll still be available. YouTube any of the Dynamite Kid Tiger Mask matches. They are an absolute masterpiece. They're not necessarily great matches if you look at them now, but for the time, and you think about what was done in wrestling back then,
super influential.
They're light years ahead.
And I think since you've talked most influential, I might go for most iconic. So I think we've got to go for Jushin Thunder Liger.
Love Liger.
When I think of junior heavyweight, I think of Liger. He's the first man that comes to mind. If somebody says cruiserweight, I might think of somebody else. But if somebody says junior heavyweight, it is Jushin Thunder Liger that comes to my mind. He's an absolute legend. He is just so decorated with so many different tight championships over the years, won the Super J Cup, won Best Super Juniors countless times. He is an absolute legend.
And a selfless booker.
Oh, yes. Almost too selfless, one could say.
Yeah. Right, let me go for another one then. I will go for, predictably, another New Japan guy, Koji Kanemoto. Koji Kanemoto is probably my favourite Japanese junior heavyweight. Kanemoto was like a standard sort of junior heavyweight in his style for a long time. He would use a bit of high flying, some sort of standard strong style stuff. And then he learned a little bit of shoot style. So he learned his kicks improved, and he learned a lot of submission holds, particularly the ankle hold. And he sort of had a bit of a heel edge. His match that Dave Meltzer rated as 5 stars.
El Samurai.
Yeah, the best of Super Juniors 1997 final.
The final, wasn't it?
Yeah, the final. I can't remember where it is. Maybe Budokan, but they didn't run it very much back then, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it's the Best Super Juniors final 1997. It is a 5-star match as rated by the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer. If you haven't seen it, find it. It is a masterpiece of a match. I won't tell you who wins, no spoilers. Just go and see it. It's a masterpiece. Kanemoto's great, and as is El Samurai, who is a very underrated junior heavyweight. Adam?
Well, I think since you've kind of taken some of the really big ones, I want to give a shout out to somebody I've really loved. And I didn't see him at the time he was around, but I've watched a lot of his old stuff now and seen him even now, and when he's motivated now, he's great. And that's Minoru Tanaka. And he is unbelievable to watch. And I know that you've told me that sometimes when he's been in his down phases, he's not been that great to watch during his Wrestle One days. I haven't really seen any of those matches, thankfully.
Yeah, and towards the end of his New Japan run,
yeah,
he was very unmotivated.
But I have seen him have some absolute classics over the years when I've gone back and watched some of his matches, and he is, not just one of my favourite junior heavyweights to watch, but one of my favourite wrestlers to watch, period.
Yeah, around the year 2006, he had joined Jushin Thunder Liger's heel group, C2U, Counter-Terrorism Unit.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was Control or Counter.
It was Counter,
I think. But he joined that group, but he was very much the wrestling leader of that group, whereas Liger was just like the face of the group. He had some fantastic matches around that time with Koji Kanemoto, a really good match with Tiger Mask 4. A lot of them are on New Japan's YouTube. Just go and find them. There's some pretty great matches there.
Okay, one more each.
Rey Mysterio. I think I'll go with Rey. Rey's, we think of him as a cruiserweight more than junior heavyweight, but they're the same.
They're the same thing.
They're the same thing. Just it's a weight limit. I think Rey's the most influential lucha libre wrestler of the last 25 years.
Certainly in the cruiserweight style, I would say, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just amazing, fantastic in WCW, great in ECW, brilliant in WWE.
Brilliant in Lucha Underground.
Brilliant Lucha Underground. Basically, Rey
everywhere he's been. Yeah,
Rey is amazing everywhere he's been. Unbelievable wrestler, and it's great that he's back now as well.
Well, there's only one person I can think of when you mention Rey Mysterio, and that's Eddie Guerrero. So just think of the Halloween Havoc match, man.
Eddie.
Yeah, great match. And Eddie wasn't a cruiserweight for his whole career, but he was absolutely fantastic when he was a cruiserweight. He worked some stuff in Japan, he worked in Mexico, he worked in WCW, and he was absolutely fantastic as a cruiserweight wrestler. And he's somebody that I miss dearly every day, but he was an absolute legend.
And he was great as Black Tiger too as well.
Yes, absolutely. That was the Japanese one I was referencing.
I didn't catch.
But yes, so with that being said, anything more to add?
No, I think that's it. I think we'll leave it there, then we'll...
Oh, sorry, we're out of time. We'll catch you next week on the Two Man Booth.